Imagine you are a seasoned television host. You have a perfect script, carefully prepared questions, and a broadcast schedule timed down to the very second. But then the studio door swings open, and Robin Williams walks in. In that moment, throw your plans straight into the trash. Because when Robin sits down in the guest chair, he doesn't just bring a new role to promote, he brings an electromagnetic storm capable of short-circuiting every normal rule of live television. The most famous talk shows in America usually begin with a polished setup, a sofa, a well-dressed host, and a few opening questions. But with Robin, those plans often survived only the first few seconds. He didn't wait for questions. He sensed the humor in the air and started shaping it. He could turn the cup on the table into an alien's telephone or transform the host's tie into a venomous snake, all happening faster than the audience's brain could process. Even legendary hosts like Conan O'Brien, famous for his own improvisational talent, once admitted, half painfully and half joyfully, that he felt powerless. Conan said that trying to keep an interview on track with Robin Williams was like trying to conduct a tornado with an orchestra baton. In the end, even the most professional hosts would lean back in their chairs, give up all attempts at control, and laugh until tears rolled down their faces along with the audience. Many A-list stars in Hollywood, when asked what it felt like to stand next to Robin on stage, used a nervous metaphor: the fireworks effect. Being near him was like sitting beside a giant firework that had already been lit. You never knew when it would explode or what colors would burst out. You couldn't perform alongside him. You could only hope not to be swept away by the dazzling light. Robin's explosions were never meaningless. They were chains of intellectual chemical reactions at extreme speed. He could read the mood of an entire room and turn the most ordinary things into endless waves of laughter. And perhaps the peak of that chaos was his ability to borrow other people's voices to reveal the funniest truths, an extraordinary talent that even those he impersonated could not help but admire. If the mind of Robin Williams was a storm, then his voice was the magic wand that could transform into anything. No one in Hollywood, whether a legend or an eccentric, escaped his radar. Robin's impersonations were not simply about mimicking tone. He captured the spirit, the tiniest habits, and turned them into surreal performances that left audiences wondering, how can a normal human voice possibly do that? On the show of Ellen DeGeneres, audiences once witnessed a classic piece of audio magic. In just a few seconds, Robin could glide through dozens of accents, from a proud French waiter to an irritable Scottish grandmother, and then instantly transform into an anxious penguin. The speed was so incredible that it felt as if he carried an entire orchestra inside his chest, switching channels faster than any remote control. But what truly amazed people was his courage in performing these impersonations right in front of the people themselves. At an event honoring Al Pacino, Robin stood on stage, looked directly into the eyes of the legendary star of The Godfather, and delivered such a sharp Pacino impersonation that Pacino himself burst into laughter. He didn't hesitate to turn Christopher Walken, one of his favorite targets, into an even more comedic version of the original, or borrow the voice of Jack Nicholson to tell outrageously mundane stories. He even dared to imitate Mother Teresa while accepting a prestigious award, transforming solemnity into a brilliant moment of satire without sounding disrespectful. His creativity seemed to have no borders. Robin did not only imitate real people, he also mimicked imaginary ones. He could turn Shakespeare's Hamlet into a muscular hero speaking with the voice of Arnold Schwarzenegger, or imagine what Joseph Stalin might say if he were a fitness trainer. He placed historical figures into absurd situations, turning barriers of language and culture into a shared celebration of laughter. This was not simply imitation. It was the careful observation of a genius studying humanity. Robin saw people's weaknesses and their humor, then reflected them back in the most dazzling way possible. Yet behind the many voices and flamboyant characters, he also possessed a razor-sharp satirical mind, sometimes powerful enough to leave an entire nation momentarily stunned before realizing the brilliance of the joke. The humor of Robin Williams did not stop at funny voices. It was also a sharp weapon capable of piercing cultural barriers and rigid stereotypes. He possessed a limitless way of thinking, where boundaries of politeness or fear of criticism seemed not to exist. Robin could deliver a direct punch of truth wrapped in a mischievous smile, leaving people shocked yet unable to stop laughing. One of the most memorable moments in television history happened during a talk show appearance in Germany. When the host asked a serious and somewhat self-conscious question, "Why do you think we don't have many comedians in Germany?" the entire studio fell silent, waiting for a diplomatic response. But Robin, following his instinct as a challenger, fired back with a sharp, ironic question. "Did you ever think maybe you killed all the funny people?" The remark touched directly on a painful historical memory, leaving the studio frozen for a few breathless seconds before waves of laughter erupted at the sheer boldness and brilliance of the moment. Offstage, Robin carried that same mischievous humor into real life as a way of testing society's reactions. In San Francisco, he often told stories about disguising himself as strange characters, even wearing the full costume from Mrs. Doubtfire and casually walking into adult novelty stores. With the most serious expression he could manage, he would ask absurdly detailed questions about the function of the items, leaving the store employees confused and overwhelmed, never realizing that the eccentric middle-aged woman in front of them was actually one of Hollywood's biggest stars. The power of Robin Williams lay in the fact that he did not need a long narrative structure or a carefully calculated punchline. Sometimes a raised eyebrow, a slight shift in his jaw, or a meaningful sideways glance was enough to turn an ordinary moment into explosive comedy. He understood that laughter does not always come from words, but from the collision between the ordinary and the absurd. That sharpness, sometimes even shocking, made some people mistake Robin for a reckless provocateur. In reality, behind his most biting and satirical jokes was a compassionate heart that longed to use its influence to ease the world's pain. From those startling moments on screen, he quietly redirected his enormous energy toward causes that no comedic script could fully capture in scale. Behind the endless laughter and the wild transformations, Robin Williams possessed a remarkably generous heart, always sensitive to human suffering. He didn't use humor only to entertain, he used it as a tool to help change the world. If on stage he was a brilliant firework, then in real life he was a quiet candle, steadily shining for lives forgotten in the darkness. His commitment to helping others was most clearly seen through comic relief. Alongside close friends Billy Crystal and Whoopi Goldberg, he helped turn Comic Relief 3 into a legendary 3-hour broadcast on national television. Their mission was simple: raise money and awareness for the growing crisis of homelessness in the United States. While many celebrities treated charity as a way to polish their public image, Robin approached it with instinctive dedication. He could stand on stage for hours, exhausting himself with performance, hoping the money raised might provide a meal for a child or shelter for a struggling family. The industry itself never overlooked his talent or generosity. Hollywood honored Robin with its highest recognitions, but perhaps the most telling acknowledgement came from his vocal performance as the genie in Aladdin. It was the first time in history that a special achievement honor recognized a performance delivered entirely through voice acting. Robin didn't simply read lines. He breathed life into the character, transforming an animated figure into a symbol of freedom and kindness, much like the man himself. Even with prestigious honors like the Academy Awards and the Golden Globe Awards on his shelf, Robin never treated them as the final destination. To him, they were only markers along a longer journey, the journey of connecting people through empathy. He frequently visited military bases, children's hospitals, and remote communities to perform for people facing despair. He did not arrive as a superstar, but as a friend willing to share laughter so others could briefly forget harsh realities. Robin's energy seemed endless when he stood before those who needed him most. Yet that generosity, so extreme it sometimes drained him, raised a deeper question. What drove a person to constantly create joy for the entire world? Perhaps laughter was not only a gift he gave to others, but also a kind of medicine that helped him survive the silent depths within his own heart. Why would a man feel such a powerful need to make the entire world smile that he sometimes forgot himself? For Robin Williams, laughter was never just a professional skill. It was liberation, a form of salvation he once described as an incredible drug. He didn't merely perform comedy, he lived in the heartbeat of his audience's laughter. For Robin, creating joy was his way of communicating with the world, a sacred mission to lighten the emotional burden carried by humanity. Whenever he stepped before a crowd, he seemed to transform into something beyond ordinary human limits. He once described the feeling of receiving immediate audience reactions as a powerful vibration. The energy exchange was so intense that when a performance ended, he often found it impossible to relax right away. His body still buzzed with the warmth of applause, and his mind continued racing with ideas, as if the creative engine inside him had no off switch. Robin's philosophy was simple, yet deeply tragic. The world is filled with pain, and if you can create a moment that helps someone forget their sadness, that moment becomes a miracle. He understood that a smile could sometimes be the final lifeline for someone drowning in despair. Perhaps that is why he gave his energy so generously, almost recklessly, willing to exhaust every emotional cell in exchange for a brief moment of relief for strangers. That direct connection with audiences was what sustained him through the highs and lows of life. When people laughed, he felt loved, accepted, understood. Laughter was not merely a response to a joke, it was an invisible thread linking lonely souls together. In Robin's world, no one remained a stranger once they shared the same rhythm of humor. He lived like a candle burning at both ends, most brilliant when bringing light to others, even if the cost was the slow wearing down of himself. Robin Williams is gone, but his laughter remains, echoing as an enduring legacy of compassion. He fulfilled his mission completely, to lighten the weight of the world. When we look back at footage of him today, we see not only a legendary comedian, but also a pure soul who chose to love humanity using the only weapon he possessed, endless humor. A humor that never truly fades, still warming the hearts of those left behind and reminding us that no matter how harsh life becomes, miracles can still be found in a simple smile. Robin Williams spent his entire life making the world lighter, yet sometimes we forget that the people who bring us the most laughter are often the ones who need the most understanding. Is there a memory or role of Robin that you will never forget? Leave a comment and let's honor this remarkable man together. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe so we can continue sharing the lives of legendary figures.